guys, spring is in the air finally. I feel like after that brutal winter that we had, I'm just like standing outside like that little emoji, taking in all of the rain. I am happy to report that the string of good reads is still going. I feel like in part it's because there are a lot of really exciting things that are coming out this year, but I also feel like I have been reading a lot of different kinds of books. Some literary fiction, obviously, our bread and butter, but I've also done some literary criticism. I've done some romance, lit girl approved romances, and I don't know, I just feel like reading different kinds of books has really helped to keep a rhythm in my reading. Like I feel really excited to just continue to pick things up. It's funny because last year I wasn't really feeling the draw towards reading, and this year it's like there are so many good things that are coming out that I almost have a little bit of like choice paralysis. And that actually brings us to today's sponsor, Book of the Month. If you don't know what Book of the Month is, it's an online book subscription that sends its readers a list of books from emerging new authors that they might not have come across otherwise. I think it's a great way to discover new authors and also maybe read things that are outside of your comfort zone. Also, their book selection is crazy. Like it's really good. At the beginning of this year, Book of the Month held an event in partnership with FSG for Lost Lambs. It was a great event. They recorded their podcast episode with Madeline Cash, and that book was included as their like January pick. Last month, they included debut novel Yesteryear, a book that I literally and physically have not been able to shut up about. And my friend Lizzie, who is also a Book of the Month subscriber, she actually picked that book for last month's pick. We were able to like yap about a book that just came out because Book of the Month is so good at getting these newer releases in the hands of readers. I know my taste can be a little bit off the beaten path, and so I do not say this lightly, but the picks at Book of the Month have been excellent. For this month, I chose Good Joy, Bad Joy by Mickey Bramer, and this is about older women towards the end of their life. It's like a friendship novel. One of the friends learns that she has months to live, and so they are determined to like squeeze out the most that they can from life. Is it ever too late to become who we're meant to be? I love a book about women in friendship, and I love a book about women's wrongs, and I think these women are about to get up to some shenanigans. And it's described as like wise and also very funny, so I'm really hyped for that one. I used to read a ton of essay collections, and I've kind of fallen off of that. I was really excited to see that as an option for an add-on, they had Delusion by Cassie David. This is an essay collection about turning 30 and the pressures of like romantic pursuits and having to find the right partner, and also like social media and cultural criticism. And so I think this is going to be a really good time. If you want to try Book of the Month, you can click the link in my description and get your first book for $5. That's amazing because these are hardcovers. Also for this month, you can type in the code FLORAL, and I don't know if you've seen their new campaign. One of the options for the tote is like the Nobody Reads tote, which I love. Also, it has a zipper. Why have we not done totes with zippers before? And it has like a little pouch for your phone. I am obsessed with this. I just wanted to say thank you so much again to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. I know we were just talking about yesteryear, so let's get into it. First book that I read this spring was Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. This, insane. This year has just been, I don't know, I've just been so into the plottier literary fiction. I'm gonna share a quote from this one. Who was I? A flawless Christian woman, the mother every woman wanted to be, and the wife every man wanted to come home to. My name is Natalie Heller Mills, and I was perfect at being alive. I read that and I was like, okay. So we meet Natalie, and from the first page, she's just like, oh my God, I'm so perfect and everything is like amazing about me. Natalie is an influencer. She has millions of followers and lives on this like ranch with her cowboy husband, and she's kind of embodying this traditional wife narrative. She's a trad wife. She has a production crew and like a summer camp of children. Not really, it's like her own kids, but it's a lot of them. It's like 7 of them. They're all like very seemingly well behaved as per the carousel post, and her life just seems like picture perfect. It's the highlight reel that everyone sees on social media. But then one day she wakes up and she's in 1805, living the life that she has been cosplaying this entire time, and it gets real. The ride that this book takes you on is bananas. All of these like really interesting cracks begin to appear in the narrative. We start to see how Natalie chafed at her college. She had a roommate who was like liberal and ambitious in the way that most women entering college are. Natalie detested this. She was like, oh, this girl, she's so naive. She doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know what's good for her. And what's good for her is a man. She thought her drive was misguided, and she thought that trying to strive for liberal myth was silly. Natalie is incredibly condescending, and so obviously these two women start to butt heads. They have a big fight and they have a big falling out, and we just see how much Natalie despises this woman and her choices. But as Natalie has like graduated and has continued on her life, she constantly thinks about this roommate. It's usually draped in like a scoff, but she's thinking about her nonetheless. She's just wondering the trajectory of her life. There are also these moments when Natalie, perfect mother Natalie, starts to interact with her kids. It's really interesting to see how she becomes like a mother. All of the sort of messaging that she's getting, and also the messaging that she embodies and shares. But when the reality of it happens, when she's having a difficult childbirth, and then when she meets her first child and there is no connection and there is no warmth. We see something really honest, but we also see the cognitive dissonance and all of the mental gymnastics that Natalie does in order to adhere to the scripts that she has been fed and also has swallowed and is regurgitating. There's one part where she meets her daughter for the first time and she says, "What can I say about the way she looked at me when I was holding her in my arms? How else could I describe the expression of this child if not malevolent? Of course I didn't say this to anyone. In front of my mother and my husband and my in-laws and the nurses, I cooed and cried and said, 'Isn't she perfect?' But when I was alone with the baby, I held her at arm's length. I whispered, 'Who are you?'" I got chills when I read that. This novel is really looking at facade and looking at how staunchly we can push those facades and what it feels like to feel that cracking. And also just like, what is the cost of performance? What is the cost of performance of this specific kind of life? In all of those really rigorous questions, there's really fun twists. There's a thriller element because we don't exactly know what's happening. So well done. There was a lot about like the performance of femininity and how that fits into tradwife culture, but also there was like an interesting conversation about like the erotics of religiosity, which I was fascinated by. Caro also has a podcast called Diabolical Lies, and when I was reading this, a ton of people were like, "Have you listened to that podcast?" And I was like, "No, never. I'm not really a podcast girly," but people put me on. So there are a couple of episodes. Carrie recommended one. There's another Instagram user who recommended another, and the woman who, she's like an OnlyFans person and had like sex with 100 men in a day. That was fascinating, but also yeah, so good. And so I've been having a really good time just delving into what they are interested in to see kind of like the bones of that in their research come through in the novel. I think if I had not listened to those podcasts, this would have blown my mind even more, but because I had that sort of context, it was just more interesting. And I felt like I was going through my grad school university's database, because I also feel like this novel is incredibly psychological. I won't say anything more, but I felt a lot of things when I was reading this, and I think it's really interesting, and I think it's going to generate so much conversation. I think like when books are buzzy, there's always going to be some like pushback against it. I didn't realize that there was pushback, but some people have made me aware of some of the pushback around this book. One thing I saw, and I can't remember who showed it to me, but they were saying that this book is not well researched, which is insane to me, because if you know anything about Caro and Katie from Diabolical Lies, is that they'll put out a 2-hour podcast with so many resources. If this novel is anything, it's well researched. There was this discourse about likability and whether the writer of this novel likes her protagonist and what that sort of lends to in the fiction, which I thought was really interesting, because I think in the beginning she comes off as super unlikable, but I don't think she's an unlikable narrator. And I don't know that that's a hot take. I think that's actually a pretty lukewarm take once you read this, but I actually felt really bad for Natalie throughout this, and I thought she was really agentic in the ways that were available to her. Yeah, I thought she like flexed a lot in it, but then also kind of was a victim of what she grew up in and what she thought a good life meant. I think those conversations were really interesting. There was one conversation that Caro was having about the ethics of a writer and their fiction, kind of the conversation around whether you can separate the art from the artist. I am gonna actually link that episode down below, and I'll timestamp the part where they're talking about that, because I think the conversation around that Caro and Katie were having was really fantastic. I'll put down all of the episodes actually that were recommended to me. That way you have something to listen to. There's so much hype around this book, and all of the hype is super, super warranted. Highly recommend reading this book. And if you do read this book, I find it really hard to have conversations in the YouTube comments. So like come to Instagram and DM me and we can have like a full-blown conversation, because I have literally not been able to shut up about this book and I want to talk about it forever. Okay, the next book that we have is also a book that I feel like has been making splashes on Instagram, at least on my side of Instagram. And this one is called Strangers, a Memoir of Marriage by Belle Burden. So I remember I picked this book up randomly on audio. I started listening to it and immediately I was hooked, because what happens is we have this woman, a wealthier woman is married to this wealthy man, and they have like this picture perfect life. Belle gets a call from this man, and the man says, "I think your husband and my wife are having an affair." Belle freaks out. She confronts her husband, and her husband's like, "Yes, it happened one time. It won't happen again. I'm so sorry. I am so apologetic about it." The woman who he was sleeping with has like a distress event and ends up in the hospital. Her husband goes to the hospital to ensure that she's okay, which is fine. Belle starts thinking about what this means for their marriage. They have these kids, they have this life. It's COVID. Everything is shut down. So we're in really tight quarters, and she's kind of thinking, how are we going to work through this? Do we let the kids know? What are some supports that we can get? Like, she's trying to figure out how they're going to try to work through this thing in the conditions that they're in. But then her husband tells her, "Actually, I don't want any of this. I am gonna leave. Do not call me. I will reach out to you when I am ready." I'm sorry, what? I was shocked, scandalized, clutching all of the pearls that I do not have. It starts to recount the beginning of their relationship and the progress of that. It was just a fascinating fascinating read. The book club that I'm a part of said that this is not a memoir, this is a horror story, and I could not agree more. This also was a modern love essay, but it has definitely like gained legs and has taken off. When I was reading it, I was just like shocked and also interested, and I also kind of found it instructive because I mean, I've heard of prenups, but I don't really know anything about prenups, but I know that what she did was wrong in that prenup. His ask was crazy, and it was really also interesting to kind of, I think what she was doing was trying to see the beginning to the end, or the beginning to like the fracture of the marriage, to see if there were any like overt signs as to what was coming. And there really weren't any signs, which I think is scarier, but I think is also super realistic. I was riveted by it and I could not put it down. I read it in like 3 days. I was sick to my stomach while reading it. A lot of the critique that I've heard is that, and I think something that I also thought about the memoir, but I didn't so much mind, is that it's a very passive memoir. There's no real self-reflection or critique. There's nothing. It's kind of just like a recounting. I think a lot of people had issue with the fact that there was no deeper excavation. But I also think that Belle is a pretty passive person. I give her grace, and I think it's a really hard thing, and I think hindsight is 2020. This was absolutely bananas. It was enraging as well. There's one part where after they split, he comes to see the kids, acts like nothing is wrong, comes in totally bubbly. This man also probably has like a narcissistic personality disorder. Comes in, acts like everything is fine, then goes into the kitchen where Belle is. He's like, oh, I'm starving. And she's like, I'm gonna make you a sandwich, and it's gonna be the best sandwich you've ever had. And I wanted to chuck all of my electronics into the Hudson River. I was so upset by this woman's choices. I think I would have not reacted in the same way she did. But also I think the thing that's kind of scary about this and kind of makes it like a horror is that we don't know if we would have acted. Like if you were in the situation, would you have acted differently? It's very easy to say, no, I would have never. And I really do feel like I would have never, but I've also been down bad. I don't know. I think it's really worth a listen. It's a short audiobook listen, but my God, super instructive. Like, don't come to me asking to change a prenup. Next, I read The Anthropologist by Aysegul Shavas. This was such a tender, lovely little novel. I read this one when I was in London mostly. This is essentially a novel about this couple, Aisha and Manu, who moved to this new city. This novel is a very quiet contemplation about what makes a good life. Throughout the novel, it was trying to hold its weight in the middle of all of these surrounding pressures around how do we assimilate, how do we maintain who we are, how do we not become strangers to where we come from, how do we maintain tradition, how do we create new traditions, what is worthy of a ritual, what is worthy of a tradition. The way that the narrative sort of padded around all of these questions was very soft-footed and very like tender. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I was talking to Ivana. She really recommended this one, and she was saying that this is Whereabouts's less annoying younger sister, which I can appreciate. It's like unnamed city, trying to find your bearings in it, trying to find your bearings within kind of like the structures of your relationship. And yeah, really, what does it mean to have a good life? There was one contemplation around the traditions that we create that I thought was like really profound. Sometimes life can move so quickly. I don't know if you guys like engage in this, but I don't really think of tradition making or ritual making. Maybe I do. Maybe if I think about it, I have things that are routine to me and feel safe to me. But the idea of like coming together with someone else and like having all of these traditions that you come from, especially when you come from a place that is so heavily steeped in tradition, and deciding for the two of you in the little universe that you've created what those traditions are going to be like, I thought it was so wonderful. This was also just filled with beautiful lines, and I so enjoyed it because I just like read it on the plane. I like finished it and closed it, and I was like, okay, yeah, that was cool. And then I pulled my Kindle out and started reading something else. And I'm really trying to remind myself to slow down. I think I'm just like really excited because 2025 was rough in terms of reading. So now that I feel like drawn to it, I kind of just want to keep the ball rolling. I like put this one in my bag and I forgot about it for a day or two, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, damn, do I like reread it again? It was just something that like really snuck up on me. I really liked the questions that were worked through in it, and I liked the way that the questions were posed and that the two characters moved through and around. I want to read White on White. I'm just excited to read more of this writer's work because I really just enjoyed being in this world. A quote that I really liked was, "Perhaps this is why we felt foreign to the foreigners, because we were constantly tipping beyond the rules we'd set out for ourselves. What we wanted, above all, what we wanted to find in the city, were people with whom we could abandon the rules even as we were establishing them. Those people who could become our family." I think I am going to reread it, actually. I think that's going to be like a beginning of summer project for me. Baby's first Virginia Woolf. I read A Room of One's Own. I actually have tried to read this one before. I had a really ugly edition of it, and I think that we're so superficial. But I do think that impacted my ability to get into it. Also, I was in a waiting room at CityMD to get COVID tested because that was in fact my first time getting COVID. And so I was like delirious and not well and was trying to read Virginia Woolf. Who does that? Apparently me. I was like, I think she's like too brainy and I can't get into her. I can't access her. But actually, this was fine. Also, very unsuspecting to me, this was really funny. Very like meandery. I liked the way that she worked her way through these winding paths in order to answer a question. I thought it was fantastic. It's Virginia Woolf. I don't have to be the one to tell you that she's amazing. There was a part where I was like, is this racist? I buddy read this with Sarah and we were like, yeah, absolutely. Probably problematic, but also like the things that I think she was saying were really fascinating. So this is a lecture or a collection of lectures where she's interrogating the conditions necessary for a woman writer to be. Her argument is that you need financial security and a space to write. In this sort of exploration, she's also looking at the fact that women are bound by their conditions. She has this really interesting thought experiment with like William Shakespeare, and if he had a sister who had the same talent, would she be able to sort of have the same success? Likely not, because even though the talent is the same, if you're looking at the talent in isolation, yes, of course, but because the talent is bound within the context of society, c'est la vie, that's the way it goes. So that I thought was a really interesting contemplation. This woman hates Charlotte Bronte so bad. And that was something else that really tickled Sarah and I when we were reading it. I thought there was something really interesting in this because one of the critiques that Virginia Woolf has is that to be a really excellent artist or writer, you have to be able to write for the sake of the thing. Like you have to be able to bring the artistry to a place beyond social condition. To an extent, I do agree with that, but I think there are times when you kind of can't divorce that. And I think there are also times when it can be done in really profound and like important ways. She talks about Charlotte Bronte as someone who was like unable to see beyond the conditions that she was in. And she said there was too much sentimentality and there was too much anger in Charlotte Bronte's work. One has only to skim those old forgotten novels and listen to the tone of voice in which they are written to divine that the writer was meeting criticism. She was saying this by way of aggression or that by way of conciliation. She was admitting that she was only a woman or protesting that she was as good as a man. She met that criticism as her temperament dictated, with docility and diffidence, or with anger and emphasis. It does not matter which it was. She was thinking of something other than the thing itself. There was a flaw in the center of it. She had altered her value in deference to the opinions of others. And I think this encapsulates maybe this little series well, so that when I ask you to earn money and have a room of your own, I am asking you to live in the presence of reality, an invigorating life, it would appear, whether one can impart it or not. I really enjoyed this, and I'm really excited to continue on this like Virginia Woolf path. I think Sarah and I picked another book, but I'm also really curious to see what her fiction is going to be like, because I don't know, there are some writers who are really prolific whose like nonfiction I really get along, and then whose fiction I have a really hard time with. James Baldwin. Hoping that hers is one that I can kind of dip into in all of their iterations with ease, but we will see. The next book I read, the lit girl approved romance that I mentioned, Found Time. Guys, I loved this. I really, really enjoyed this. This is a novel. It starts off with two teens in like the 90s. They're not teens. They're young adults. They're like 20-year-olds. Lily and Reed. They're in college fully. They meet at this concert. They have this really short, like impassioned affair. Reed had just agreed to do some like screenwriting thing. And so he's set to leave New York in like 3 weeks. And so Lily is contemplating whether she should take the risk and live the short affair, or if she should do the smart thing and protect her heart and say like, okay, well, you're leaving, so we're gonna end it here. She decides to just enjoy with abandon the short time that they have together. Years later, they find each other again, having lived full lives, and what it looks like to reconnect with someone who you had such a strong connection with, and how you guys fit entire lives together. I thought this was wonderful. The thing that I really enjoyed about this novel is that the kind of observations and the kind of things that our narrator honed in on were things that were so mature and so specific. Like this part where she says, "The strap of my dress has fallen halfway down my shoulder, revealing the swath of skin between my breast and my arm that I've always secretly found elegant, that I've always wanted someone else to admire." I feel Reed's eyes drift right to that spot, and then, as he remembers himself, quickly shifts back up to meet my face. I am suddenly aware, unself-consciously, that I am being perceived by this man in exactly the way that I've yearned to be. Unburdened, charismatic, like I too might have a second, deeper meaning. I want to tell him that he can keep looking, that I want him to, that somehow I feel safer within the cradle of his gaze than outside of it. He doesn't need to leave the door open for me. I don't want anyone else to find me here. It just felt like a woman looking at desire, and a woman, you know what I mean? Looking at herself, and a woman wanting to be seen and wanting to be desired in very specific ways, in ways that she appreciates about herself. So it just felt like a grown-up romance novel. It was also very fun, and their banter was a lot of fun, and it was also very sexy. Every time I finished reading a heavier book, I would like dip back into this one, and it just felt so balmy. Like I just had the best time reading this novel. The last one we have on our list is The Street by Ann Petrie. This is a book that I have been trying to read forever. I came across this one during the pandemic. I feel like I tried to pick it up and then would get intimidated by it. The book club that I'm a part of picked it as their read. I started reading this and it's funny. The things that happen in this are really funny, and I kept saying like, oh my god, I'm having so much fun with it. There was one girl, Faith, who had read the book already, and she's like, funny is an interesting way to describe this one. And as the novel continued, I was like, oh okay, yeah, you're totally right. Also, Nyla, who's in book club, she got like a vintage copy, and the back was just like obscenely racist. It was just like, I'm gonna put a picture because I can't remember the things, but I was absolutely scandalized by that. This is a book about Letty Johnson. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. Letty Johnson is married to this man, and they have a child, Bub. The man can't find a job, and so Letty's like, you know what? I'm gonna help. I'm going to be like a nanny with this rich family far away. Letty goes and leaves husband with Bub. I can't even remember homeboy's name. While she's working and making the money for the family, homeboy's cheating on her. Her dad writes her a letter and says, you need to come home. When she comes home, she realizes that her marriage is over. While she was working with this wealthy family, she was observing the workings of a wealthy home. And what she learned was that wealth kind of fixes everything. Letty kind of clocked this, put it in her pocket, and was like, all right, bet. I'm gonna carry this with me. Her husband and her separate, and she's trying to find an apartment. She ends up in Harlem. She finds this dingy little apartment. She gets there, and the super is like this tall, lanky, bizarre dude. And Letty's like, this man is so obsessed with me. And I'm like, Letty, you are obsessed with you. Chill, this man is just like trying to get you an apartment. I was so team Jones, and that's not the right team to be on. Basically, this is about this woman living in Harlem at a time when Harlem was kind of a difficult place to live. She's raising this son, and it's just about what it looks like to try to skirt all of the things that are inevitable when you live in a place like this. Like if you live in a place where there's so much like darkness that lingers in every corner, can you maintain your dignity? Can you maintain your morals? Can you maintain your principles in a place like this? Letty really tries to. Letty really tries to be upstanding. In this, there are like opportunities that come up, but every opportunity comes at a cost. It's just really heartbreaking. But the cast of characters in this is so fantastic. Everyone is so textured and so lively. I also think The Street has like the best opening. It's like Letty is walking through Harlem and the wind is blowing her hat and her hair and the fur on her jacket. Ann Petrie describes the wind as like holding a finger and like lifting the hat and putting a finger in the collar of the jacket, and I thought that is such a stunning image. The writing in this is really beautiful, but also very accessible. Like I think it's very easy to slip into, and then it takes a twist at the end, and I support this woman's wrongs, so that's on that. This is a book that sold 1 million copies. It sold buku copies when it came out. It was really well acclaimed, and I can see why. It's like very humorous, it's very funny, but there's also a lot of profundity in it. A really, really good time reading it. Read this for Min. There's a woman running a brothel in the building. Read that for her. Read it for Bub. Bub has a little place in my heart, and it was nice to just like go back to a classic. So yeah, those were the books that we read in spring. I have like a list, maybe I'll record it so you can see, but I have a list of books here. I keep picking a book up and then like reading a few pages, and then I'm like, oh, but there's this book, and I keep just going through books. But I think I'm gonna put this TBR away and just like pick a book and sit with that book, because I actually have found that I really do have choice paralysis, and I don't know what to read next. So tell me what you're reading. Tell me if it's good. Tell me if I should pick it up too. Let me know how it's been going. But I do think that is it. We will see each other very soon.